I'm only going to talk about the English section. That's the part that I'm most familiar with. But the SAT is going to be simplified. So right now, it's out of a 2,400 overall score. It's going back to the 1,600 that it used to be. But the sections are not exactly the same as it used to be. It's not like they're just reverting back to the original. What they're doing is, if you're familiar with the current SAT, there's a lot of different sections. So there's math and English, but they split it into like 6 or 7 different sections. And when you take the test, you take maybe a math section first, followed by an English section, followed by another math section, and maybe another English section. So they intersperse it, and there's a few more different types of questions, some of which in the English section are still based on sort of a little bit of background knowledge, like you have to go in knowing some vocabulary in order to answer it. What they're doing is they're trying to now change the test so that it's more real-world skills based, in that instead of having individual questions in the English section, for example, they're going to have everything be passage-based, and what they're now calling evidence-based reading and writing. So you can see here, looking at specifically the English section here, they used to have critical reading and writing and an essay. So 3 sort of different types of sections. Now what they're going to do is they're condensing all of the little reading sections into one, and it's going to be called the evidence-based reading section, and then there's going to be an evidence-based writing section, and each of those will be scored out of 800. The essay now has been moved, and right now it's considered optional. Well, it's optional, however, because we have no idea how colleges are going to, if they're going to require it or not, if you are planning to take the SAT starting in March, we suggest that you go ahead and take the optional essay, because you don't want to have to go back and take the test again if it turns out when you apply for the college that the college you are applying for is asking you to take it. So it's optional, but I would consider it not really optional. If you're taking it, especially in this first round, I would go ahead and just take it. The essay itself is only scored out of 8 points. So it's more of a holistic score. It's not going to be factored in to the 1,600 score. The other big thing that I want to point out is that right now, if you really have no idea what the answer is to a question, we usually tell you don't just randomly guess, because there's a guessing penalty. But on the new test, you would want to guess regardless, because there's no penalty to guess. You don't get anything docked for guessing. Apparently, I did. Okay. All right, so right now there's like 3 different reading sections and lots of different questions. What they're doing now is, instead of having those 3 different reading sections, they're going to have one evidence-based reading section, and basically everything is based off of several passages. So they can pick 4 passages and about 11 questions per, I think. And the point of the questions will be there's going to be 3 different types of questions for each, well, okay, not just 3, but 3 major types of questions, and then a few other types of questions that they'll throw in there. And part of what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that you really can take a text and analyze it. So all of the questions are going to be based off of the passages. There's no, individual vocabulary type things. It's always going to be, what does this word mean in this passage? So it's all in context. Or later when you do the writing section, how would they fix this? But it's in the context of that passage. Okay, so what we're going to be focusing on, and I'll talk a bit about it in a minute, is understanding the question types. Because there will be certain types of questions that will show up over and over. And again, there's no sentence completion. So sentence completion used to account for almost a quarter, a little over a quarter of the questions. They've taken that out completely. Nothing is a standalone question. Every question is based off of a passage. Got it? Okay. The writing and language is still going to test your knowledge of grammar. This is actually, I think, one of the harder parts because a lot of schools don't really go through grammar like we used to. So there will be times when you look at a question and think, I don't see anything wrong with this, but there is actually something wrong with that sentence. And it's really, so you will have to still learn a lot of grammar usage concepts. But again, it's not a standalone question. It's based off of a passage. So you'll read a passage and they will, instead of critical reading questions where it's, do you understand the meaning? It's going to be, can you make this sound better? So what are some of the language issues with this particular passage? And again, not a single question, but everything in context. And the essay is not a part of this section anymore. Okay. The essay section that's optional, but we say that you should do, is it's no longer a 25-minute section where the prompt could be anything. The prompt on this particular section is always going to be the same. There is going to be a passage. Like I said, the whole English section now is based off of reading something. Okay, so there's still going to be a passage. And the question is basically always going to be explain how the author makes his or her argument. So the question itself is not going to change. It's going to be the same no matter what the passage happens to be. What they're trying to do is move away from a tell us something, based on your own knowledge, your own personal experience type thing, which is what essays in the past, you had to kind of draw on your background in order to write the essay. They're basically trying to remove any of that, oh, you have to know something in order to answer this question. They're going to give you a passage and you have to basically break the passage down to answer it. Okay, and you also get 50 minutes, so unlike not 25 minutes like you did before. So, next, try again. Okay, in terms of our classes, what I am going to be doing is breaking down each section at a time. And so rather than have you take a whole section, a whole English section where you do the reading and the writing and the essay, we're going to address the reading, the evidence-based reading, sort of in one section, and then the grammar and writing parts in another section, and then the essay last, because it's the optional piece. But I do this because I think when you are approaching a test, if you can identify the kinds of questions that you're going to be asked, and have sort of a strategy for how you're going to answer that question, you'll have an easier time than if we practice it over and over, it'll stick better in terms of your own ability to do that same strategy over and over again. So that's what my goal is with the class. So if you take the class, you will see that the first couple weeks we're going to focus on, okay, here, these are the different styles. There's basically 4 different styles of passages that they're going to pull from. And not a lot of it will be literature. They're really going toward more nonfiction type passages, so there will be science-based passages, history-based passages, and out of the 4, you'll still get 1 that's more of a literature type, but the other 3 will most likely be nonfiction. And there is a difference to reading nonfiction versus fiction, and the kinds of questions that you will get, and how you look for the answers with those kinds of passages. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about in terms of, okay, I'm reading this kind of passage, what kinds of questions, what kinds of sentences should I be looking for to answer these questions? So